This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, Project U.F.O, Season 2, Episodes 12 and 13.
Would you say he hallucinated, or was he simply lying?
There is a third possibility, sir.
And that is that he was telling the truth. We're being invaded by flying saucers, beings from outer space. We're supposed to be responsible men, Mr. Ryan. Are you saying that you can honestly accept such an outlandish premise?
We haven't accepted anything yet, sir. Or rejected anything. If Mr. Rollins saw something, it doesn't necessarily mean it was extraterrestrial.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that is ready and willing to do a cruise ship show. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Must be French, because boy, is this expensive. Remember that line? From the first episode.
How do we get a show on a cruise ship, Jordan?
They do them all the time.
Like, how do we get one, though?
Oh, how do we get one? Oh, that would be a fun thing, wouldn't it?
We just do a cruise every day. We do a new podcast.
Yeah. We would have to worry about aliens and werewolves and what else has been on the cruise ships in these shows.
I was very excited that we were back on a cruise ship. I also immediately thought of Kolchak and that werewolf on a cruise ship. I was like, oh, glad to be back.
That was a much better episode, wasn't it?
It was. I still think about that episode.
It was impervious to everything. And you know what? You know what was nice at the end of the episode? He wasn't like, "Hey, that werewolf never existed. I don't know. You were blinded by the sun, and you also had the chills. So clearly, that makes it seem like there was a werewolf." So, anyways, sorry for wasting your time.
I believe the end of the Kolchak episode was, "We found no evidence, Kolchak. You're a liar. Goodbye."
Yeah, but we as the viewer, we knew he was right, as he always did. He always knew Kolchak was right.
He was always right, and Vincenzo would never print the story, so no one found it.
He was still cashing those checks though. Like, Kolchak, we need to print something. Anyways, we're not talking about Kolchak though. We're talking about Project U.F.O.
Project U.F.O, Jordan.
Yeah.
So before we get into it, do you want to do a little game?
I do want to. I do want to do a game.
Oh, you do.
I do want a game. Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to recast Project U.F.O as a major motion picture for the year 2023. It's going to come out next year.
I don't know. My cast. I'm not. I'll say this now. I'm not that confident. I'll tell you why I picked the people, but I'm not that confident. I think you might have better picks already before I even know what they are.
Jordan, I won't lie. I was fairly uninspired by Project U.F.O, so this is also a pretty perfunctory cast.
It's good to say that because it's not like the tone is so strong in this thing, or the characters are so memorable, or the content is so electrifying that it's a worry. You can cast anyone and go, yeah, that's what it is now. And I did that a little bit. We'll talk about it, but you're right. Like, it's hard to get a thrill out of the show, you know?
Well, I'll tell you this one thing I know for sure. We're going to cast both Major Jack Gatlin and Captain Ben Ryan, who replaced him.
Of course. And
in my mind, in this movie, Major Jack Gatlin, he's killed early on, and then Captain Ryan comes in later to like take over his shoes.
I thought the exact same thing. I thought he just get killed at one point. Well, it's the only way to do it. Same page.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling you were going to do some stunt casting. That's what I think out of this. But why don't we start? Do you want to start with Major Jake Gatlin then?
Yes. Our surprise death in the midpoint, or I guess maybe the first act. Well, I'm not sure. We haven't written it yet.
Okay. I mean, now looking at things, what would have been like if this was a low budget movie, we would have cast like Bruce Willis, and he wouldn't have had any lines. You know what I mean? Because of his latter day career, sad or whatever.
It's very sad.
It is sad, but I mean, like, he's still taking the checks. I would say my bit of somewhat stunt casting, but the real thought is charisma. I need someone who like gets in, you want to watch.
Looks great in the trailer.
Looks great in the poster. Does a lot with very little, and it's really just about the attitude. So I picked George Clooney.
Oh, good choice. I thought we were going to say the same thing.
No, a little bit older. I know it's a little bit older. Who did you pick?
Your whole lead-in made me think you were going to say the exact same name I did.
And what was that?
Nicolas Cage.
Oh, Nicolas Cage. I mean, I think you have the same idea if coming from a different angle.
Yeah, yours is a little more like high star power. Mine is a little more high madness.
Yeah. So, well, why don't we do this? We're going to do something a little different, I think. Why don't we go through, because it's such a short cast, why don't we go through all of them and then see who goes well together?
Sure, why not?
Let's do that different. So let's know. So we have an option right now. It's either George Clooney or Nicolas Cage. I think I've seen some movies where like they've cast things like this. You're like, did any of this make sense? Did it just get whoever's available?
Well, next up we have, of course, Captain Ben Ryan.
Yeah. So I went a little different. I went, who can kind of have that feeling of like kind of Southern charm and
No. Yeah, that's Harry Fitz, my friend.
Oh yeah. Well, I changed it up then. The person I went with is Matt Damon.
Oh, you want to get Matt Damon? I mean, I think if you're going George Clooney to Matt Damon, I can see what kind of movie that is.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. There's a real Monuments Men, you know?
Yeah, this truly is. You're really going for like big dad movie.
Yeah, exactly. I wish that movie was better, by the way. I wanted to like it more than I did. I was like, it's okay.
I went with a person who I don't know why, but he just popped in my head. But I was like, if Gatlin's gonna die, who's gonna show up to replace him? For some reason in my mind, I was like, Jamie Foxx is coming in.
Wow, Jamie Foxx. Interesting. Jamie Foxx. Okay. So now we have two more options. We got Matt Damon or Jamie Foxx. Again, the person doing the casting, they're just throwing darts at a wall. Okay, I changed things up. So next we have, I say, Staff Sergeant Harry Fitz, right? Who's going to come in?
Yes, the southern gentleman.
Okay, so I changed things up because I thought too many dudes, and who cares? It's Project Mayhem. It doesn't really matter. Maybe Harry Fitz is like Harry's like it's like a nickname or something. Do you know what I mean? So,
Harriet.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna change this, and instead I'm gonna put Regina King.
No, interesting. That's a good choice.
Yeah, she's a good actress.
I also like that you called it Project Mayhem.
Oh, Project Mayhem. Did I really? Project U.F.O. I've been calling it Project Mayhem. I don't know why.
You just love Fight Club so much.
Yeah, that's why. Oh, that's right. That's probably what it's from. Project Mayhem. Yeah, it's Project U.F.O. Sorry, everyone. But Regina King, what do we think?
She's great. I love Regina King.
Yeah.
I went the exact same direction as you. I had a Harry Fitz as well.
Isn't that funny? Oh, man, we're so in tune.
We're in tune. I did mine by looking up who are actors actually from the South who can do this accent naturally. And I came up with Dakota Fanning.
Whoa, that's yeah, I'll tell you, it's real hard if I have George Clooney because the age difference is like 70 years.
Well, he's the superior officer, so I figured it was okay.
That's true. Okay, so again, options are Regina King or Dakota Fanning. This is an interesting movie. So next, I would say is Libby, right?
Yes, Libby Verdun is her last name apparently.
Yeah. So Libby, I was like, cool. I'm gonna gender swap it. It's not a great role. Who can I get who will like really save a sort of thankless role? Maybe we add a little something to it. There's a little bit of backstory or something. And I thought, screw it, Woody Harrelson. Right? Every time you just keep going back, he's on the phone. It's Woody Harrelson.
I mean, I went the same way. I also gender swapped it, but I was thinking more along the lines of that Ghostbusters remake where they just they made the secretary a dude and he was just like there for like 3 seconds as a joke.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
And I cast it with Seth Rogen.
Oh, Seth Rogen. You know what? I have to tell you, I love that we have such varied casting, but we have the exact same concept. You and I. This has been one of our closest, if not for the actors.
Our instincts are the same. We just are. Yes. We're building two different movies.
Yeah. Okay. So this might tell it. So who's your director, and then we will figure out what this cast is, because in the end, the director is going to choose this. So I'll tell you, I really went with a swing. He's coming back from Europe. He says, "We've had a good time. You all now appreciate me a little bit more." Paul Verhoeven's coming in.
Paul Verhoeven's coming.
Come on now, that's great. You know it's going to be great.
I haven't been canceled yet, have I?
Yeah, has he been canceled? Oh no,
I'm not sure. He seems like he's someone who would be, but I'm not sure he has.
I don't know. I think he's still got it.
All I remember is that the anecdote from Starship Troopers was...
I know that.
All of them had the shower scene, the co-ed shower scene. And he's like, well, if I'm going to direct it, I also have to be an old nude man who directs you. And I'm just like, I don't think anyone wanted that.
Like, no, you don't have to. He's like, oh, he's taking his shirt off.
Like I said, I was a little unsure on what to do with
Uninspired.
Project U.F.O. It's a weird one. You're right. Tonally
Yeah.
difficult to nail down. A little uninspiring in some ways. And as I was just sitting there, I'm like, who does this? I don't know. And I was just like, you know who we need to bring back? You know who should come back and just find a way to fix Project U.F.O.? There's only one person I can think of. John Waters.
No.
I just want to see what John Waters would do. What's he going to do?
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting choice. I mean, well, let's do this. Who we going? I think we have to go with Paul Verhoeven, but if you really want a John Waters movie, we'll do it.
That's all right. We can go with Verhoeven. I was like, I need to bring a wild card in here. It's the only thing that's going to save this movie.
Okay. So it's a very interesting pick, and I think it's the first time we've had John Waters mentioned in one of these recasts. Okay. So it's a Paul Verhoeven. His name's right at the top. People are like, hey, I liked RoboCop, and I liked Basic Instinct.
Did he make Basic Instinct?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So, yeah, okay, so Paul Verhoeven joint. We've got Major Jack Gatlin. I believe it was, it was Nicolas Cage
or George Clooney.
Or George Clooney. What do you think?
I mean, if it's a Paul Verhoeven, it's not a George Clooney.
I agree. It's Nicolas Cage. Okay, so Nicolas Cage. This is already, people will at least go, sorry, what is this movie?
I mean, I think it's gonna have a gonzo tone, so...
Yeah, okay. So it's Nicolas Cage starring in Paul Verhoeven's Project U.F.O. And Nicolas Cage is just there. He's stunt casting. He gets wild and then he gets killed. And who's going to be playing Ben Ryan? We've got Matt Damon and
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx. What do we think?
It's a tough one. I
kind of think now like Jamie Foxx now, to be honest.
It's so hard to imagine Matt Damon like coming in after Nicolas Cage.
That's what once we picked Nicolas Cage, this is what I mean. It sort of starts falling in place. So I think it's got to be Jamie Foxx, who's going to have to really hold his own on this now.
For sure. I think he'll do a good job, though. I think Paul Verhoeven and Jamie Foxx might be a nice mix.
Okay. So, Staff Sergeant Harry Fitz. Who do we got?
I like Regina King. It's a good choice.
Okay, let's go Regina King.
I mean, I don't hate Dakota Fanning. I think she'd do a great job. But Regina King's great. Who doesn't want to watch Regina King?
Yeah, let's do it. Regina King. Regina,
sorry.
King.
I lived in Regina, so I only pronounce it the Canadian way.
Okay, this movie's coming together. The poster, it's starting to form.
And of course, we got Libby Verdun.
Libby.
Where we've gender swapped the secretary who's going to give them their like various calls in. And we had, I believe, Woody Harrelson or Seth Rogen.
Yeah, what do we think? I kind of like Woody Harrelson still.
I think it's the right choice for this movie. Like, I don't think Seth Rogen makes as much sense.
Yeah. Woody Harrelson. That's great. I mean, honestly, if you heard this like you saw it on, I don't know, Deadline or something, Hollywood Reporter, you'd be like, wow, it's at least going to be worth it to like check out the trailer.
You're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense for Netflix. I can see why Netflix is making this. The algorithm really told them what to do.
Yeah, it's going to be huge for 3 days.
Exactly.
And I think that's it. That's the movie.
That's it. I think it's a fine movie. I think it's the best Project U.F.O. could hope for.
Now, do you think it's like a redo of one of the episodes, like the basic idea, or do you think it's a wholly original new take on this UFO?
Wholly original. Jake Gatlin's getting killed by aliens in the first 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe, God forbid, there'd be even the slight implication that maybe aliens exist.
Oh, aliens exist for sure in this movie.
Yeah.
And they're going to destroy the world.
It takes place actually right after the episode where we find out the aliens didn't come to Earth because they can't breathe air, and they said if we didn't fix it, they'd like punish us, and that's what happens. They've punished us.
Give us that breathable air.
Yeah, and so they come and they've got like the classic like glass dome helmets and stuff because they can't breathe air. It's great.
They're like, we can't breathe this O2. We need O3.
Exactly. Thanks, Verhoeven.
All right, Jordan. Well, that's a fun movie that we're not going to make.
I think so too.
Should we get on to these episodes?
Yeah, I guess. They won't be as fun as that movie.
That's true. Here's the IMDb summary for Season 2, Episode 12, Sighting 4026, The Atlantic Queen Incident.
Mm-hmm.
Passengers and crew of the cruise ship Atlantic Queen have a close encounter with two UFOs. Captain Ryan and Staff Sergeant Fitz hits a ride with a Coast Guard helicopter to investigate their claims while they are still at sea.
Yeah.
And as we kind of hinted off the top, we're back on a 70s cruise ship.
It's funny. I watched this episode, and I had someone was over while I was watching, and so it was a weird experience because I was like, sorry, I got to watch a Project U.F.O. That's the behind scenes of a podcast. And we were watching, so I got to see someone else watch a show, and it was a lot of like, what is this? And so I wrote down a couple notes that she was saying while we were watching it, and it just is amusing to me. Just to see what it is like to just, if you like randomly turned on this, and it was like right off the bat, people were talking and it was very quiet. I was just watching, taking notes. And then she just was like, what banter? I was like, yeah, it's not good.
They're just chatting back and forth, these people on this cruise ship. I believe how it starts is the night shift on this cruise ship. They pick up some radar of a UFO, which we've seen before, which we'll see again. Radar signals of a UFO out there. And as they look off the bow, they see a large glowing orb waiting for them out there. And they're freaking out. They're like, we got to go wake up the captain. We got to go see what's going on. I believe one of the officers steps out, and what he sees is a UFO flying over. A UFO that looks, I believe, a lot like a little macaroon, like a tasty little macaroon flying by.
It's the most like an actual flying saucer we've seen in a while.
Yeah, somewhere between a macaroon and maybe, or a hamburger, if a child could draw.
Yeah, but I have to say, we've talked about this multiple times. And there's one thing that the show does great. It's model work. They do great UFOs. Every week, the UFO looks different. It's always really interesting. However, this is the first time that I can think of, and maybe I'm wrong, where they've done like a real post effect, which is the way the door slid open. Because we're going to see like this UFO, and then it's like a door opens. But it looked like, I don't know how they did it in the film. They just like wiped like a spot open for the door to open. And I thought it looked terrible. Terrible. And I was like, guys, no, like the model work is so good. This looks awful.
This is their least inspired UFO, I'd say.
Yeah. Anyways, it's like it opens up, so we get this stupid looking door opening so that we can see like the silhouette of an alien.
Yeah, it's all glowing inside. And a man on the deck, an old comedian who we'll meet later, he looks up and he sees the alien standing in the doorway. And as the light shines down on him, the alien emerges. It sort of like kind of somehow jumps from the ship onto the deck of the thing, and he's this very odd-looking silver alien, and he runs into the ship, and that's kind of like the opening of the show. Is like an alien is on the cruise ship.
Honestly, for a brief moment, I was excited because I was like, finally, we've never seen an alien properly on this show. This is going to be really hard to get around unless they do, I don't know, the stupidest thing ever. So I was like, no, this is good. This might actually be an episode where there's a little bit of mystery or a little bit of like suspense. And I thought, oh, this is great. And then while I was watching, I was like, this is Project U.F.O. There's no way they're going to be able to pull off this balancing act. So just get ready. It's disappointing.
Of course,
weren't you disappointed?
Oh, well, of course. It's Project U.F.O.
Yeah, I was so disappointed. Honestly, I was really excited with the UFO, and I was like, I even kind of like the look of it. I was like, this is interesting.
Well, Jordan, we do at least get the new season 2 formula is we hop back to the headquarters of Project Blue Book, and we get a little bit of character development for a second.
Yeah, I guess it's like Harry's seasick.
Yeah, Harry doesn't like to go on boats. They make him seasick.
That's it. And then I think the other guy is like, take some pills, and he's like, they don't work.
He's like, too bad for you.
Yeah, that was the point where Jamie was sitting with me, and she's like, what banter? I was like, that's the best they got,
That is the best they got. What I did like is they're going to take a helicopter out to the cruise ship on its way back in so they can get there quickly and, get the reports before it lands. And I thought they were like, I don't know what I expected, but I did not expect a helicopter to fly out there and then for them to rappel off the side of the helicopter onto the cruise ship.
And we watched the whole thing. It's like the helicopter's there. They're like an orange jumpsuit and they're like, strapped in and they're slowly lowered to the ship. And we watched the whole, whoever it is first, Harry. And we watched it for like 3 minutes. And then we watched the next person go all the way down. I was like, guys, this takes so long. Now, here, I'm going to mention a weird thing. How long did it take, and maybe it's just me, how long did it take for you to understand what kind of boat this was? 'Cause I didn't really understand it was a cruise ship for the longest time. I was like, is this a military ship? Because everyone was in military uniforms. I understand now they were just like, they're dressed up. It's like a classy cruise. But they gave no indication there was anyone on board other than the crew for at least 20 minutes. And then at one point you're walking by a deck and there's like people having lunch. I was like, oh, this is a cruise? I had no idea.
I knew it was a cruise when the old guy was on the deck and saw the alien, because he was clearly not like a military guy or anything. He was there having like a smoke and a drink, and I'm like, oh, this is a cruise.
Okay, and let me just say, you have a comedian. Now, talk about his comedy and stuff we see later. It's not great. But like they do nothing with that. Don't you think there's an opportunity for something interesting? But it was just like, yeah, he's a comedian. For what reason?
Everybody needs a job.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he could have been anything. He could have been a magician. He could have been a plumber. He could have been a guitar player. He could have been an electrician. Doesn't really matter. It's
Jordan,
like,
how would we have wasted 2.5 straight minutes midway through the show just watching him do his act?
Well, that's why. That's why they did it. They're like, yeah, he's a comedian. The problem with that is there's multiple problems, but the main problem is you go, he's a comedian. So now the person writing the episode has to actually write jokes, and they have to write jokes that might have been performed in one of these comedy sets. It's like, well, you're not gonna be able to write a joke, and they can't.
I have a feeling those were the actual comedian's jokes.
Oh, do you think so? Do you think he's an actual comedian and those are his jokes?
Well, I can tell you, since he's the old man who witnessed the alien, they go talk to him at some point. His name's Ollie Hires on the show, and he's performing on the ship. But they hired an actual comedian who was on a bunch of stuff, and he's known as a guy who has like a memory for like thousands of jokes. Like apparently he can just get up on stage and just like riff out like a completely new set at any time. He's just remembered every street joke he's ever heard.
Well, they're great. I'm glad he remembered them. They're a lot of like, take my wife, please. You know, it's like that sort of stuff.
No, they're not even that good.
They're not even that good.
Anyway, they arrive on the ship and they meet with the captain. The captain, of course, was asleep during the incident, and he doesn't believe a word of it. In fact, the captain is quite convinced that the officer who's like reported the UFO sighting is trying to steal his job by concocting this story.
It's weird because there's almost something interesting here, which is I guess you'd call it the B plot, kind of, not really, or at least the motivation for these characters is, yeah, he thinks there's other people are all out to get him. It's sort of his character. He's a little bit defensive. I guess he's getting a little bit older. Again, I think there's something they could have played with here, a little bit of aging as sort of a theme. Maybe there'd be something here. Again, that's probably asking too much of Project U.F.O. I'm desperate to call it Project Mayhem, by the way. Project U.F.O. But is the job him captaining a cruise ship so good? Is that like something someone would be holding on to real hard? Is that a post of real pride for this guy? Because I was like, it seems like something that someone like in his position, someone who loved boats or being a captain or this authority, it feels like not a great gig to be the captain of a cruise ship. Am I wrong?
I think you're wrong. I think it's a very good gig, and I think it pays very well.
Okay, well, there you go. I was just like, I don't know if I buy this motivation that he thinks everyone's out to get him because of his plum gig, but I was like, I don't know, is it that plum? But maybe you're right.
I think actually cruise ship captain is a like, or at least at some point was a very well paying job.
Well, okay, well then.
Like, this guy's probably clearing $200 a year.
No.
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, you're out at sea for long periods of time away from your family. You're a very specialized skill set. It's got to be big money.
Anyways, well, someone write in and let us know if it's big money being a cruise ship captain.
Also, I like the thing that you don't like about this motivation is that like he's paranoid about someone stealing his job. The thing you don't mind about his story is that he thinks his officer is going to steal his job by reporting that he saw a UFO. Like, how is that going to cost the captain his job?
Well, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't make any sense. If anything, it's going to cost the officer his job for being crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because it's Project U.F.O. They needed something, that's all. It's just like, yeah, he's unreliable now.
I mean, I think that is the case with almost every episode we've seen, is that anytime anyone sees a UFO, everyone thinks that's going to somehow advance that person's career. Like, they only would make it up or say they did it because it was going to be good for them. Like, everyone is always convinced it's like, oh, you saw a UFO, good things are coming your way.
It's true, isn't it?
Which I think is insane because it's the opposite is true.
You're right. If there's one thing that kind of holds all these episodes together is there is always that idea that the major reason people are lying is because, or would be lying, is because it's good for them. You're right. That's very interesting.
They're always just like, your career is going to take off now that you saw that UFO. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, I get the first I can remember is that one where the dad was trying to convince his son-in-law to like really milk it, really work his way up in the military because he saw a UFO.
It's wild stuff.
Yeah.
The captain, of course, he doubts his officer. He also doubts the story of the comedian because the comedian's career is in the toilet. He's an alcoholic, and this could be a way for him to get a lot of press.
That's right. Yeah.
But of course, the officer swears he saw it. Ollie, the comedian, swears he saw an alien. He even had a chance to talk to the alien there because the alien, stepped off the ship, stood in front of him, and one of the most bizarre moments of the ship is the alien stands in front of the comedian, and the comedian proceeds to make a racist joke to him.
What was the joke he made?
Don't you remember? The alien steps off, and Ollie's like, "Oh my god!" He's like, "No offense." Which is my favorite part, is he starts the joke off by saying, "No offense," and then is incredibly offensive. He's like, "No offense. But once people get a look at you, there goes the neighborhood, if you know what I mean."
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that. You're correct.
And I was just like, ay, ay, ay.
Luke, let's be fair. He said no offense.
He said no offense. No offense. I know you're a person of color, but we don't like you around here.
It whitewashes everything. It just goes right over top. I wouldn't worry about it.
That alien was not offended.
He wasn't offended at all. He was like, you're right.
Anyway, Project Blue Book starts looking into it. They do their usual investigation for physical evidence, all of which will become, like, explainable or, like, unimportant to the show later.
And let me just say, the note I made about the alien, I forgot to mention this. Doesn't he look a lot like the new crappy Klingons in, like, what's the new Star Trek show? Discovery? Remember how they messed up Klingons? He looks a little bit like that, like a silvery version.
I mean, he's very silvery. He looked like a gray, a little bit like a gray from the X-Files, but with just like more of a rubber mask feel.
Perhaps. Anyways, sorry, I just wanted to throw that in.
You needed to get that in there real quick.
I haven't crapped on Star Trek Discovery in quite some time. It's still a bad show, everyone.
It's still stuck in that craw of yours.
Yeah, it's still not good. Don't watch it. Well, I mean, watch it. I don't care. Watch it if you want it. You want to waste your time. You go be watching Project U.F.O. It's much better.
You're so mad. You're just telling people about this show is bad. You watch like 14 episodes of Project U.F.O.
That's right.
It's while Project Blue Book's kind of looking into the evidence of everyone's report that they bump into another passenger. She's one of those classic tropes, an older woman who's very flirty and always dressed in pink for some reason.
Yeah, and again, what is the trope? Is the trope like she's frivolous, she's silly, you shouldn't take her seriously? Is that the trope?
I think a little bit of that. I mean, I think on this show in general, you don't take a woman seriously. It's the time period. But I think what it is she's over a certain age, she's single, so everyone she meets, she's always flirting with the Project U.F.O. guys, right. And they're, it's just like, oh, you know her, and everyone always dismisses her as just like, she's just an older lady.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, she's just there to kind of be like, I don't even know what does she add to this?
Well,
Not
she
much.
confirms the story of the alien because what she says is that night she heard commotion in the hallway, left
That's
her berth,
right.
And when she went out, she literally bumped into the silver alien and caused her to faint because she came face to face with him running around the hallways. So she's able to confirm the alien on the ship, basically.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me just say this: we don't have to explain because don't worry, Project Blue Book boys are gonna explain this to a T, so everything will make sense. But don't you think at this point, the people on the ship, knowing what we eventually know about the alien, they'd be like, oh, here's what the alien is?
I mean, yes. When we find out, a little tease for later. We're not going to tell you what it is yet. Once you find out why, everyone should have pieced this together instantaneously.
That's right. It's one of those things where, like, it's not that it's so dumb. I mean, it is dumb. But it's just like, well, there was no mystery here. Immediately, if you had this conversation, they'd have been like, oh, I understand the misunderstanding.
But here's probably the part. I think this is the scene that probably got your hopes the highest that this was going to be like, it was an interesting web for them to wiggle their way out of, because the Project U.F.O. guys, Project Blue Book guys, they're walking around. They're searching for basically where the alien went in the ship. They're following sort of the path it took, and they have their old radioactive meter with them.
Geigometer.
And what they find is radioactivity coming out of the cargo hold. They go down to the cargo hold, and there's just radioactivity everywhere. And they ask one of the ship's crewmen, they're like, what do you store down here? And they're like, oh, we are transporting a bunch of radioactive isotopes as part of our cruise ship cargo. Would you do that? Would you just have cruise isotopes?
I don't think so. It feels like they're like, I don't know what's on cruises. Sure, they could do this too. It works in.
And they go down and they find the isotopes. They're in these sort of lead containers. One of them's fallen over because I'll note none of them are strapped down in any way, shape, or form. They're just sitting loose on the ground of this cruise ship.
Yeah, this ship has real safety problems. And I don't know if we went over the scene or it's next, but they also, like, someone spills ammonia everywhere, and it's like, guys, this is, like, have some sort of quality control, you know?
And the one that's fallen over has opened slightly. Now there's this question of just, like, did it just happen to tip over during just, like, the ship's waves? Or are the aliens here because of the radioactivity? Did they come down here? Did they open it? Like, that's sort of the mystery. And I think this is when it's at its highest point where you're like, are we actually going to have an alien on the ship? That's when it feels like the most like this is maybe going to be like a real crazy episode.
If you've never seen Project U.F.O before, you think, you're right, we might actually see an alien.
They see all this, they've seen all the evidence, and Captain Ryan, which I've started noticing now, every episode of Captain Ryan, at some point he seems to be like, there's something strange here, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And they can't quite suss out what that is. And they end up going out, walking the ship, and someone invites them to dinner. And as they're talking about what to do and what to do next, Fitz starts like rambling on and on about how like he wishes they'd got to the cruise ship a day earlier because he heard that the other day they had a masquerade ball on the ship. And this is the thing that clues the captain into what's really happened. And before we get to it, because this is basically how he solves it, is he hears masquerade ball, and he's just like, of course. And you'd think the next scene would be them doing this. And they do this. They have like an Agatha Christie style. They gather all the suspects and tell them what happened. But before they do that, they go to dinner, and we get to watch the comedian do his act for a bit.
Yeah. And it's not good. It's not good at all.
I believe it was mostly about aliens, immigration, the recession, and American exceptionalism.
Sorry, I'm taking it back. It was actually really good.
It was so bizarre. I've actually cut both of his comedy bits. I'm just going to put them on the social media accounts.
I'm glad we all get to enjoy them.
Because they're so bizarre. Anyway, let's cut to... They go to the alien reveal party. They've gathered all the suspects around at this place, and Captain Ryan breaks it all down. He refutes every piece of evidence they had. He's just like, the radar signal. That was a sub that was nearby. A nuclear sub was nearby you, so you picked up on radar. The physical and mechanical evidence is all due to ship's maintenance. Like, the phones went out because they were fixing them at that exact moment for some reason.
Yeah.
The glowing orb off the bow of the ship. Why, didn't you know it was foggy that night and the moon was quite low in the sky? You were just seeing the moon through the fog.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the other UFO they saw flying by, they're like, yes, and that one? Why, I believe that was just seagulls in the moonlight. I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know what? Here's what's interesting about it. They systematically, and this is something I think is more of a second season thing, which is they systematically go through each little bit that they've, like every spinning plate, they've gone through and said, this is because of this, this is because of this, this is because of this. But you have to believe there's so many coincidences that it makes sense, but it's to the point where it's like, it's like this is too much. These are too many coincidences. I get two things happening, three things, but if every episode there's like 7 things that somehow are happening at the same time, it's like, I think you're just like trying to do an actual cover up, which is almost what this show could be. Couldn't it just be that Ryan's always doing a cover ups and he's like, yeah guys, it's seagulls. Anyways, that's good enough, right? It's like a Men in Black sort of thing. Anyways.
And of course, they're like, but what about the alien we all saw? And as soon as they ask that, the alien walks into the room, Jordan. Everyone's screaming. The alien walks in person.
Yeah. They're like, this? You mean the alien costume that we've had the whole time that everyone knows about?
Yes. Sergeant Fitz pulls off the mask. He's like, it's me. Turns out they rent this down in the ship's costume shop. And on the night of the incident, a man was going to go to the masquerade ball dressed in this alien costume, but he got too drunk. So instead of going to the masquerade ball, he just walked around the hallways for a while.
Yeah, scary people. I never said, oh, you think I'm an alien? I'm not. I'm clearly wearing a costume. And you've seen it in the gift shop.
He's very drunk. You don't understand.
Yeah. So that was it. That's how they explain the alien.
And honestly, everyone with the exception of Ollie the comedian, they're all like, oh, it all makes sense to us. We withdraw our alien claims.
But... so they're all like, okay, case closed. And then they add this little button to be like, or is it?
Well, this is the other part of the Project U.F.O formula, is you have to have a final scene in which you disprove or potentially disprove everything that's come before.
Yeah, but I don't think it does.
What happens is a woman and her toddler, who we've seen in the background of a few scenes, much like those two rummies we saw in that other episode, just hanging around in the background all the time.
Yeah.
They finally emerge and they talk to the Project Blue Book guys, and the woman says, "You know that night with the UFO? My toddler says she saw it too." I'm like, okay, cool.
That was it. And you're like, oh, okay, wow. Now I don't know what to believe anymore.
This 4-year-old girl saw that alien too? All right, great.
Yeah. End of episode.
The end.
Stay tuned for Matlock.
Mrs. Columbo, thank you very much.
Mrs. Columbo, sorry. Yeah, it was Mrs. Columbo's next. Kate Mulgrew is Mrs. Columbo.
All right, Jordan, here's the IMDb summary for the next episode. Season 2, Episode 13, Sighting 4025, The Whitman Tower Incident.
You think we're looking at 2 separate incidents then?
Oh, it's got to be, Harry. That radar blip was 10 times the size a cargo chopper would cause. And no pilot in his right mind is going to fly 10 miles off course in a 20-knot wind, carrying a 1,000-pound cargo on a sling to play tag with a skyscraper.
No, sir.
Our problem is that we assumed it was one object from the beginning. I think it's time we talk to Mr. Webster again.
Captain Ryan and Staff Sergeant Fitz fly to California to investigate the sighting of a large UFO by several witnesses, including an air traffic controller. During the investigation, some witnesses claim to have seen alien beings in the craft.
Yeah.
And in some perfect synergy, this is the final episode. We've jumped now to the very last episode of Season 2. And in perfect synergy with the first episode of Season 1, we're back in LA.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. I didn't even pay attention to what city it was. All I know is the Whitman Tower, this building that's going to be the sort of main area where the sighting happens. It looks terrible.
You didn't like the Whitman Tower? I liked it a lot.
Did you? I hated it. I thought again, the UFOs look great. The tower, it looks stupid. It's like a miniature. They put this fog around it. I'm like, it looks dumb.
I love it. I love it so much. Just like the first season episode of Season 1, they literally reused the same set and same stock footage of a radar station picking up a UFO on the radar.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And they noticed it's around the Whitman Tower. And in my notes, I've written here, great miniature skyscraper.
I thought it looked bad. It was the quality of like something you'd see in a toy commercial for selling an action figure.
I loved it so much.
Yeah. Well, different strokes.
A family has just moved into the Whitman Towers, and they're unpacking their stuff, and they're going to watch a TV movie. They're making some popcorn, and suddenly the signal to the TV cuts out. It gets all fuzzy, and when they look out their window, they see a really large UFO, maybe one of the best this show has ever built. It's a large orb surrounded by other little orbs on stems, basically. It's like this massive like UFO floating outside their window. It's
like a bean pod. I have a real question, though, Luke. So we find out the dad is looking for a pot because he's going to melt some butter for his popcorn. I have a very important question for you, and everyone wants to know, when you're making popcorn, do you melt butter separately to pour over?
Yes. How else would you do it?
I don't know. Sometimes people it's like you just have a pre-buttered.
Oh, yeah. Well, I make my popcorn in a pot on the stove.
I knew you did. I just knew it.
I haven't had a microwave in a very long time.
No. There you go. There's a little bit of info. If someone was doing a trivia on you, that's what they'd say. How does Luke make his popcorn? In a pan? In a microwave? See, he hasn't had a microwave in a long time.
You forgot air popper.
That's right. Anyways, continue. So, anyways, yes, the that was important. The alien ship is very long with bulbous orbs along it. Looks cool.
And their neighbor in the next building, an old man in his bed, he happens to see that these neon red lasers seem to be shooting down from somewhere out his window. So he doesn't see the UFO. He sees these neon red lasers. The exact same effect from the Scoutmaster incident.
That's right. It was blue, I think, in that episode, and this one's just red. It looks like kind of like flames, kind of?
Yeah, exactly. Neon laser flames.
Yeah, exactly.
And then a little further away from the building, this man doesn't live in the Whitman Tower, he lives somewhere else, but a snobby publisher of literature, he witnesses a very different UFO flying by. Not the orb one, but this one seems to be it's an odd one with a saucer that has a floating orb underneath it, sort of flying over the bay of, I guess there's a bay in Los Angeles it's flying over.
Yeah, the what I wrote down was, it looks a little bit like a helicopter carrying something.
Oh, what a surprise for later.
Yeah. How are we going to explain this thing?
What we have at the top is we have 2 or 3 sightings, all of them seeing 3 very different things this time. So we then jump, of course, to Project Bluebook headquarters, where we're going to get a little bit of character development, Jordan, as we know from the formula now.
You know what's funny? I don't even know if I wrote a note here. What was the character development in this scene? I think I might have fallen asleep.
What we learn is that when Captain Ryan does his sit-ups in the office,
oh, yeah.
he doesn't count. He just names all the presidents.
That's right. And the joke is he was like, well, he's doing is like, I was going to like do the names of my ex-girlfriends. And then the other guy's like, but you couldn't get up to that number. I was like, well done. Well done, everyone. Is the joke he's not enough of a ladies' man because he can't think of 200 women he was with? I was like, that's too many women.
Yeah, well, the joke is Fitz says you couldn't think of 250, you couldn't count up to 250, and then the other guy says, why'd you step on my punchline?
Yeah.
You didn't love it? You weren't laughing?
No, I wasn't.
Felt like a joke you would make at the office.
That's a joke I would make? Yeah, I'd have him roll in the aisles.
At any rate, they head to Los Angeles, of course, and they stop at that radar station, and it's very weird. But the radar guy's like, well, we can't show you the records because our computer doesn't take records of the things we see on radar, but it can do a complete simulation of what we saw. So would you like to see the simulation? I was like, what?
It's the same thing when we heard what the alien sounded like, and then she's like, yeah, this is just a simulation, though.
Our computer's so good it can simulate it, but it can't record anything.
But here's the thing. Structurally, none of these scenes really matter at this point because if you've seen this show multiple times, you know they're just going to go from scene to scene to scene. They'll get little bits of information, then they'll go back to people who will expand on what they've seen a lot, but then they're just going to go through and at the very end they'll be like, oh, let me explain what all that was. Well,
and actually in this one scene, when Sergeant Wright sees the simulation, he says one thing that actually is the final conclusion of the episode. He teases it when he says he saw the UFO blip, but it didn't look very solid to him. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, and he knows a blip when he sees one.
Yeah, he knows what's solid, and he knows what's not on a little blip. Anyway, they head to the Whitman Tower. First, they meet with that old man who saw the red lasers. And he turns out to be a creep who will only receive people in his bedroom.
Yeah, I think they just wanted him to be, I think you said earlier, snobby. I think that's what they're trying to have, but I don't know. He's like unpleasant for no real reason.
No, the other guy is snobby. This guy's just like a weirdo. He's just like, I believe he says he's like, didn't your American Mark Twain only receive men in his bedroom? I was like, what are you talking about?
You're right. I forgot we went to the guy. He's like he's like an old dude who lays in bed like he's Charlie and Willy Wonka is like his grandparents, and he wears sunglasses in bed too. That's the creepiest part.
Very odd. And he basically says, I saw these lasers, but you got to talk to my neighbors because I think they saw something real scary. Because when I went over to knock on their door, they were real freaked out. And of course, they head next door to talk to the family. The family's pretty unwelcome to them, but they agree to talk. Like they're pretty like we don't want to talk about it. And they're like, well, will you talk to us? And they come in. It's very funny. The husband invites them in, and the wife's just like, I thought we agreed not to talk about this. And the husband turns to her and says, I'll make those decisions.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the 70s, all right. You get no say in the matter.
Things were easier then, you know?
Depends who you are.
That's right.
Anyway, they recount their story in a flashback, and of course we see the Orby UFO again. It's floating outside their window. They're like, it's the couple, it's their little daughter. They're seeing it happen, but this time they say the alien ship opened up and they saw the aliens inside, and I was blown away by these aliens.
Yeah, so the aliens are humanoid, but what they basically have is horse-like heads. And again, I actually thought it looked pretty good. Like they're sort of like stylized horse heads. Like they're a little bit angular and a little bit flat, and I thought it looked really good. But the part I like though is the window or door, whatever it is, opens up. You see two of them, these horse-like aliens, staring at the people, and they're like, we can't believe it. And then the window just closes again. I like the thought of the horse aliens. We're just like, kind of bored.
The horse aliens do actually look at each other like, what about that? So close it.
They just close the door.
But you forgot the alien costumes, Jordan. They're also wearing very cool medallions.
That's right. They're wearing medallions. Similar to when we had those fake guys from Venus.
Oh, yes, that's right. You were obsessed with their medallions as well.
That's how you know it's an alien. They wear medallions around their neck.
After getting this witness statement, Project Blue Book heads off to meet the last guy, the snobby literature publisher. He's also pretty ornery with them because he suspects they're going to cover it up, and he really wants to get his story published, but he also wants to get paid for it, and no one's willing to pay him, so he hasn't sold the story yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he also says he's like, saw it out the window in the bay around the same time I lost reception on my TV. So there's, some connection to the TV signal, which sends the Project Blue Book boys out to a cable TV transmission tower to investigate the cable TV disturbance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's what the large tower is. It's a cable TV thing, right?
Yes. It's for everyone cable TV, but this is, I guess, a transmission tower where like the transmission comes in and then they go out on cable, I guess is the idea. And the guys working there agree that they had some issues last night and that something might be caught in the antenna. But at this point, Project Blue Book doesn't look into it any further. They kind of leave and they're like, let's go. Let's not look any further than this tower yet. We need to save that for later in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, let's take that family out to lunch at a diner?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. The Project Blue Book guys, they have some real expense account because they're constantly eating. They're always beating people up for lunch.
They literally just left them. They're like, well, let's take them out to dinner. And the reason this is there is because when they meet them at the diner, the family is less irritable now, which is a clue, I guess. And the other reason is as soon as the family leaves, they pick up the newspaper and see that the snobby publisher got his story published. And within the story, there's a little side note that says, some people at a bar said a crazy guy came in and also said he saw a UFO. So they're like, well, let's head to that bar and see if we can find this other witness. They do that by looking at credit card receipts till they find the man's name, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like kind of played for laughs. It's basically like he didn't know, the bartender doesn't know who he is, but he's like, you can go through all the receipts, and they're like, this will take forever. That's the joke. But the point is they find the guy.
That's the joke, except that they're like, this is going to take forever. And Captain Ryan's like, well, that's your job, Sergeant Fitz. And he just walks away. And you're like, okay, I guess Fitz is just going to do this.
Yeah. But then he was like, I got lucky. Later scene, they're like, don't worry. It was fast. I got lucky. You're like, okay, none of this is important, guys. So let's just meet this guy.
I for a second thought that Captain Ryan was going to go do his own thing and we're going to follow him for a bit. But you're right. We literally cut scenes. Captain Ryan's sitting on a patio drinking coffee somewhere. And Fitz walks in. He's like, I found the guy. I'm like, so was Ryan doing this whole time? Just sitting here drinking coffee.
Just having a coffee.
Anyway, the guy who saw it, they tracked down, he's a traveling salesman. He says he saw the exact same UFO as the publisher, the one with the orb underneath that may or may not have looked like a helicopter.
Yeah.
And he's like, it flew over the bay for sure. It happened. So they're like, all right, well, let's go talk to the harbor master. They go talk to the harbor master, and the harbor master is like, oh, that night? That was a weird night. We had a ship in the harbor. It slipped its rudder. So we had to hire a helicopter to fly a piece of equipment that's a big orb out there to drop it off. And so the thing that you saw that looked like a helicopter carrying an orb, why, that was just the machine with the rudder puller.
Yeah, it was a helicopter carrying an orb. You're like, oh, okay.
And it's very funny. When you do see the flashbacks, it does look very much, they've kind of like, they've tweaked the helicopter to look a little silvery, but it does, once you look at it, very much look like a helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the most. It's the at least of all the alien ships I've seen, it was the one where I was like, yeah, I can kind of tell where this is going. Now, don't worry, we still have other things, and the like bean pod-esque sort of like orb thing that they see out the window. I'm just saying, what a crock.
I will say my favorite part of this harbor master talking about the, like, yeah, we had a helicopter brought this thing up there, and the salesman's like, but what about the fact that I saw the UFO go up straight in the air so quickly? And he's just like, oh yeah, well, the piece of equipment it was carrying, the cable snapped, and they basically spun the helicopter off. The equipment went straight through the ship. Helicopter flew off into the sky. It was got full torque. Everybody's dead. I was like, whoa, what an ending to the story.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, everyone died, by the way. Anyway, so you guys want to go get lunch?
Yeah, it sounded like there was actually a huge disaster that night.
Yeah, he's like, you guys didn't hear about it in the paper, huh?
We go from this, and they're like, apropos to nothing, let's go back and recheck that television transmission tower, because they did say something might be caught in it that was causing problems with the signal. And we get, and I'm not joking, I went back and counted it, we get over 2 minutes of watching a man climb a tower with no one talking.
Yeah, it was. I tell you, this show, it's almost like every episode they're like, guys, we're short. The exhilarating thrill the audience is getting of watching this guy slowly and rather safely climb this tower is worth it.
It was crazy. And it turns out it's Fitz who's climbing. I didn't realize that till late in the 2-minute like montage of him climbing. He gets up there and what he finds is something silver caught in the tower. They bring it down and they're like, this looks odd. And they track it down to a novelty company that sells silver balloons. And the man who runs the company explains, oh, well, you see, I tied a bunch of these silver balloons together to make it look sort of like a used car. And we were going to float it at a used car lot as promotion. But it got real windy and our balloon display blew away. Our silver balloon display blew away.
Yeah.
And you would think that would answer all the questions. You're like, okay, what they saw was silver balloons. But that's not quite what happens. There's a weird thing where they go talk to the old man in his bed, who still won't get out of his bed and is still a creep. But they explain to him, he's like, what you probably saw, those lasers, those red lasers were probably just reflections of the airplane hazard lights on the top of the building, like reflecting off of these balloons. And I'm like, okay, he's convinced. He's like, well, it makes sense to me. Great. Problem solved. And I'm like, well, now they're going to walk across the hall and tell these other people this. But they don't. They leave the building and they go have another dinner. But this time they decide they're going to have a dinner at the top of like a restaurant on a big tower, like at the top of I guess maybe, you have it at the top of a tower. I don't know. These restaurants exist, right? I've never been to one.
It's a restaurant that's high up, so you have a view of the city.
And as they're eating dinner, Kevin Ryan's just like, there's something still wrong and I can't put my finger on it.
This was insane, Luke. This was insane.
And at the exact moment he says that, they look over and there's a woman like looking off the side of out the window down at the city, and she's frozen. Her husband's screaming. He's like, she won't move. She won't move. So Project U.F.O run over and like pull her away from the window. And when they do, she's just like, oh, I don't remember what happened. I must have been having a panic attack or something from looking off the side of the building.
Yeah. And you're like, what? And then Ryan's like, that gives me an idea.
He's like, this solves the whole mystery.
Yeah. It's so bad. You're right when you said Agatha Christie, because this has like a slight kind of a tone to that, but not nearly as good. So it's that sort of like at the end, like, let's wrap this all together, all these disparate characters with different motivations, except it has none of that.
And anyway, they go back to the family. They explain that like what you saw outside was balloons. And when you saw them, your little daughter, she's like, Daddy, is that from this planet? And that implanted an idea into your head because you've been living in this building for a very short period of time. And you haven't adjusted to the heights. So you still have some agoraphobia, which was caused you to have a mass hallucination amongst your family. And basically imagine this whole thing. Like an idea was planted in your head. Your fear of heights as a family caused a mass hallucination. So this is what happened. And here's one thing I liked. Everybody gets the explanation in this episode. And they're all like, oh, makes sense. Like, everybody accepts the explanation. This is the first time I think I've ever seen an episode of the show where everyone agrees. It's just like, oh, that explains it.
But, like, let's say this. Luke, let's say you and I, we're in an apartment. We look out the window. We both see an alien. And not only do we see the alien, we see, like, no, the alien ship. We actually see aliens. And they're like, oh, you guys had mass hysteria and you were scared of heights and thus you had a panic attack, all this stuff. I'd be like, no, I saw what I saw.
Jordan, but your daughter's hugging the walls when she walks to the apartment. She's clearly afraid of heights.
Yeah, although I didn't get that from any of the performance from the little girl. They had to tell you that. I was like, is that what she was doing? She was hugging the walls? I thought she was just shy.
What about the fact that the husband's fingers are a little stiff from him holding his fists so tight all the time from the heights he's scared of?
It's so dumb. And then the big reveal at the end, they get to show, as you're saying, that they're like, yeah, it makes all sense to us. The dad's like, I guess the reason we thought they look like horses is because of this. And he pulls a picture off the wall, and it's a picture of a horse.
Well, they've covered up the picture of the horse. It's under a sheet, and they're like, and he says, I guess that explains why we covered up our picture of a horse. We were so freaked out by it, but we couldn't figure out why. I'm just like, you couldn't figure out why you were freaked out by painting of a horse after you saw those horse head aliens.
Yeah. So it was all just like the hallucination caused by fear of heights because they moved into a building before, and they clearly, if they were a family that were scared of heights, they would have moved into like the 75th story of a building, you know?
And here's the thing, Jordan. I know it's not a good episode by any means, but at this point in the episode, I was just like, I do like this is the first episode of Project Blue Book where we've come to the end and they've literally explained everything. There's no even question. Like, this is not a true unknown. This is a solved case. This is the first solved case of Project U.F.O we've seen.
Is it?
And then they do the final scene.
Yeah.
And a man at the TV transmission tower is climbing up there to look for more junk caught in it. and he finds a medallion with a horse's head and alien language on it. And I'm like, what am I supposed to get out of this? There's real horse aliens.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's the thing. But the problem is, I know what they're, and you do too. You know what they're doing. They're trying to be like, okay, we're going to debunk this because in the real world, we've never had a like sort of approved, government approved, universally agreed on UFO sighting or first encounter. So they can't do that because they want to keep this based on the files. But they're like, okay, we'll give both sides the argument, but they don't really. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they go, we're going to do the whole episode debunking things, and then the very end we'll give you a little tease. It's like, well, it's not weighted enough, so it doesn't matter. It's just annoying at the end of the episode because you've just debunked it all.
Well, this one in particular, because the whole thing was solved. Like, it was accurately solved with a perfectly decent explanation, and then at the end they're like...
Well, it wasn't a decent explanation, but it was solved. I'll disagree with that.
Like, but maybe there's a horse-head alien. I'm like, what do you mean? You've solved it. There's no horse-head alien.
No, it was. No, you know what? It's funny. We saw it slightly different because I thought the explanation was so outlandish and so stupid, and you'd have to make so many mental leaps of logic to get where they're going. I'm like, no, there was horse aliens.
Oh, so you believe it's true. You believe this medallion. The second you saw it, you're like, proves my theory.
It proves my theory because it's better than there happened to be a helicopter flying and there was balloons and then they had mass hysteria because they saw a picture of a horse while they were clutching the end of their banister. Like, give me a break. Give me a break, Project Blue Book. I hated it. What a way to end. End with a whimper.
That was the final episode of Project U.F.O.
Yeah. What do you think? I think Project Blue Book's a better title for a show, too, isn't it?
I think so, but probably not in the 70s. It wouldn't tell you what the show was about.
Yeah, you're right.
That's why they made Project Blue Book, I think, 3 years ago.
Right.
History Channel, if I'm not mistaken.
But don't you think that, like, I think overall, my big feeling of the show is that I just think they take the fun out of things. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's what you like about these sort of alien shows. There's a little bit of like, maybe there is an alien, whether you believe it or not. It's just kind of fun. And this show's just like, no, let's take all the mysteriousness and uncertainty and let's just take it away. Isn't that more fun? Isn't it more fun to watch people do their taxes? That's how I feel about this show.
That's not really the case. Like, usually they try to keep that mystery and uncertainty in there, but it's not very satisfying because they can never have a case where, like, we think there really is an alien. They always have to have a case where they're like, well, we can never know.
Well, see, but that's the thing. But again, they don't weight it properly. It's not that we can never know. They solve it, and then at the very end, they add a little button where they go, but maybe not. And you're like, but no, you solved it. You can't do that at the end.
I think most episodes they don't solve it, though. Most episodes are true unknowns.
They're always a true unknown. I just think, I don't know, it's just a show that could have used a little bit of mysteriousness or a little bit, I don't know, just something. Just leave the audience guessing a little bit. Don't always just be like, balloons.
I think they were just, I think you're right, and they're hamstrung by the fact they chose to be like, this is real. This is real government things.
Right.
And by doing that, they can never, like, here's an incident where we, like, almost solved, or our main characters really saw an alien. They always have to be like, we never saw anything. We just got here. We mostly disproved it, or we can't disprove it. And then, like you say, they have to have their cake and eat it, too, by always having an ending where they're like, could have happened.
Yeah. It almost feels like the people that made the show, and this is maybe a weird comment to make, don't believe in aliens and find that idea silly. That's what it almost feels like. It almost feels like a show where they're like, if you believe in aliens, you're kind of dumb. Like, I don't think that's exactly what it is, but I don't think this is mean spirited, but it's almost the sense I get from it, where it's just like, yeah, that'd be dumb.
I don't think that's the case either, because everyone who sees an alien in this show is going to get a real head start in their career.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, that's what I did.
Yeah, that's how you got where you are. You saw that UFO.
That's how we started this podcast, remember?
No, I don't remember. I don't believe it actually happened.
Yeah, well, it's because you were paralyzed at a window. I had to pull your hands off.
You, Jordan, just have agoraphobia, and you're...
That's right. So, well, we got to the end. I think we should review these, give these our old scores, and see how high they are. You know?
You think we should?
I think so. We've done it before.
All right, Jordan. What do you want to give sighting 426 Atlantic Queen incident 4026?
You know, the thing about the show is, like, I feel like I'm really ragging on it. And look, it's not a good show. It's not terrible though, and it's not like it's a bad time watching it. It just is a kind of pointless time. And I know you could say that about anything watching TV, but I always feel like at the end I'm like, okay, thanks guys. But it's not like it's so bad or the characters are so repulsive or it's so offensive or anything like that. Like, we watched worse. I just think it's like a 4 to 10.
Fair enough. The Old Atlantic Queen. I think you're right. It's just an odd show in that, like, every episode just ends up being very unsatisfying.
Yeah, that's it. It's a very unsatisfying show.
It's a weird way to spend an hour. Just be like, to just leave this, like, pretty unsatisfying. I also agree, though. I didn't hate this episode. It's kind of fun. It has some fun moments. It's the weakest UFO stuff, and like, it is funny watching the man walking out of costume and be like, "Did you all forget about the masquerade ball 2 days ago?"
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it 3.5.
Yeah, see, I would have given it a 5, except for that alien reveal at the end. I was like, you lose a point for that, guys. Tisk. That was bad.
It made me laugh. All right, Jordan. And the final episode, episode 13, the last episode that ever aired of Project UFO, Sighting 4025, the Whitman Tower incident.
Maybe my least favorite episode, weirdly. I hated the explanation so much. I don't know why it bothered me to the degree it did. I didn't like it. I didn't like anything about this. 2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
It's funny. You and I feel very different. This is one of the ones I liked more than all of them because
Is that right?
I liked that it had a conclusion when these shows usually don't. If anything, I was really mad when they showed that horse medallion where I'm just like, no, just like have one where you guys solve it.
So you like when it has an explanation that doesn't really make sense? Like, yeah, you pooped yourself. That's why you saw an alien.
None of the explanations ever make any sense. That doesn't bother me because that's every episode of the show.
I don't know. I felt these were further.
I was just happy there was an episode where there wasn't like true unknown. I'm like, thank good solve one. It at least adds some variety.
Yeah, but don't you think though, by solving it in the dumbest way possible, doesn't that
No, I bought the whole thing.
Diminish your enjoyment?
It made sense to me.
Okay.
5. I'm giving it a 5.
Oh, really? You'd have been one of the people that you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I just said, get out of my house.
You're a real Ollie Hires. You're really a real Ollie Hires. You won't accept anything.
No, I wouldn't.
You're trying to get your career back together, but you're a drunk, Jordan. It's never going to happen. Well, Jordan, now that we've watched them all, I bet you're pretty curious what our final rating for this is.
I am, and it's interesting because again, this is the first time we've watched a show that's had multiple seasons, had 2 seasons, and we've kind of picked and choose episodes. So it is a real smorgasbord of episodes. So I am curious. I have a feeling it's actually probably not that low because I think we were pretty forgiving at the beginning. So I'm gonna guess it's like I don't think we would have parachuted. What do we call it?
You don't remember anything we do on this show, do you?
No. What do we call it? We eject. The escape pod. We take the escape pod. I know what we're doing. Yeah. I don't think we would have. I think this is gonna be like a 5.5.
Is it 4.91?
4.91. It's a little lower than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it would have just fallen to escape pod levels.
Yeah, it's that last 2.5 I gave.
And since you bring it up, Jordan, what do you think? How do you like this new format where we just kind of like watch the top 3 episodes and the top and end, the season finale, season premiere, and the top 3 episodes of each season? How are you feeling about this new format?
I think it's interesting. I think it will be more complicated if we have a serialized show. This show is not serialized at all, other than their characters you watch every week, which is not serialized. So I think it. Yeah, I don't know why I said that. I think it worked well. I think it gave a good idea of the show. And interesting, this show, they made some changes. Like we mentioned, the one character changed to a different character. Didn't really adjust the show. They changed slightly how they investigated. Didn't really change anything. They changed the opening, but for all intents and purposes, these were the same episodes week after week. So it was interesting to get a peek of it. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think it worked well for Project UFO. I think I watched as much Project UFO as I cared.
I agree. I probably could have gone an episode less. I didn't need to see that horse episode.
You wanted to see that. You wanted to give up when they went out on that speed racing episode in the desert.
No. The real turning point for me was when the guy came out and said, I was they had an alien costume hanging up the whole time. I was like, okay, guys, you're really just doing it now.
You stood up, you punched the person you were watching it with, and you stormed out of the room.
Nope, I did not do that. I very quietly just was like, that's what I do.
Well, that wraps up for Project UFO. So we'll be moving on to something new in a couple weeks. We'll see some new multi-season thing. See if the formula works worse. Our new format works worse than that, but it worked perfect for this, I think. In the meantime, you of course can do a little new thing we're doing: bonus episodes for charity. Go to our website, check out our social media. We have links to it there. I'm not going to explain it again. You've heard it too much already during this Project UFO period. But check out our podcasts. What did I call it? Bonus episodes for charity.
Are you a Space Rangers fan? Did you wish we watched more episodes of Space Rangers? Now's your chance.
Jordan, we watched all of Space Rangers.
Did we? What about Threshold? Hey, Threshold.
That is true. There's more Threshold to be done.
Yeah, remember that show? Remember the only thing I remember from Threshold is remember there was one point where there was lettuce with teeth.
No, that was a good episode.
That's all I remember from that show.
Peter Dinklage fighting that lettuce with teeth.
Yeah, that's it.
And Data was there.
Yeah. Let's watch more Threshold. Carla Gugino shows up. She's like, "How about this sweater?"
And of course, on Instagram and Twitter, you can see clips from this show. We'll have them up. Oh, there'll be Facebook too. What else do I need to say? Gmail, emails to Gmail. You know how to do it.
Yeah, you know how to do it. And then you listen to the podcast and email Luke and talk to him about how he makes popcorn.
Yeah, that's number one concern. But that wraps it up for this episode. So, listener, thank you for joining us on this Project UFO adventure. And Jordan, I'll see you next week.
I'll see you then.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes.